Welcome to Camp Maddie Kitten Edition. I'm Monica Tarrant, Chief Innovation Officer for Give Them 10. And joining us now is Tabitha Kucera, owner of Chirrups and Chatter Cat and Dog Behavior Consulting and Training. Tabitha will talk about socializing kittens for a lifetime of success.
Awesome. All right, let's get started. I'm so excited to be here. We're going to talk about a lot today, a little bit about kitten development, and then some effective socialization techniques. I think a lot of people get really overwhelmed with socialization, and I'll be 100% honest with you, it is something that majority of kittens are not receiving. So I'm going to talk about some ways you can practically introduce this into your daily things you're already doing with these kittens. And then we're going to talk about the long-term impact of early socialization on not only behavior, but kittens' health as well. So first, kitten development. We all know that neonatal period from about 9 to 14 days. And at this point, they're fully dependent on their mother. They're kind of guiding the world through mostly olfactory and tactile. And then they transition to transitional period, which is 10 to 21 days. And at that point, they're starting to transition from the complete reliance on their mother to the beginning of independence. And this is where kittens are getting ready for the socialization period and continued sensory development. And then we have that awesome, super short, which I understand can be a challenge, socialization period, where we definitely need more research. Of course we do. Poor cats always get in the not enough stuff. But the majority of the research that we do have out there is 2 to 7 weeks, ultimately extending to 10 weeks during that key socialization period, which is what we're going to mostly talk about today. And then we have that juvenile period, which is 2 months to sexual maturity, which can average from 4 to 10 months. So let's talk about the socialization period. So again, that's 2 to 7 to 10 weeks. And this is the most important, look at that sensitive spelled wrong. This is the most important sensitive period in the cat in regards to living with us. So I'm super fun, but unfortunately, socialization and behavior is something that is severely under implemented. And as we all know, the main reason cats get relinquished, or in most cases, the door opens and they're just let outside, is due to behavioral issues. And these are things we can prevent and set these kittens up for success with. So again, they're decreasing the reliance on their mom for survival. So they're having increased interactions with their social and environmental stimuli, right? So they're exploring a lot more, right? They're bonding with their siblings. They are most receptive to learning from new experiences. Their social learning is actually enhanced at this time. So also those social attachments are formed more easily and rapidly. And also at this small time, kittens have minimal fear and they are bonding with others. So again, their parents, their siblings, and fear serves a purpose, right? I want to be afraid of that bear and run away, right? So as we even get out of our socialization periods, right, that fear gets more increased. But during this key socialization period for kittens, they have minimal fear. And new environmental things feel safe to them. They're curious. They may startle, but they quickly return to baseline or become comfortable. And after this, again, we want them to be afraid of bears. I want to be afraid of bears. Their default setting becomes fear when new things are exposed to them. And again, we can always provide and should provide socialization past that age, but it's a little more challenging. So I just need to touch on that. But of course, behavior is complex, which is why I love it, and a lot of people don't. There's a lot of factors involved in behavior. Genetics, right? I'm going to be honest, the majority of kittens out there, these mothers are outside. They're dealing with chronic stress because they're living outside, and they're getting inadequate nutrition, again, because they're living outside. And this affects the fetuses. This affects those kittens, right? So again, that chronic stress, the genetics, like what's the temperament of the mother and father? There's not much research to actually support the father, but again, we need to do a lot more research, and we can base it on other species that both the father and the mother have a huge part in that. Again, nutrition. Is that mother getting adequate nutrition throughout her pregnancy? In most cases, no. And in many cases, these kittens may not be receiving adequate nutrition because they may not be able to be with their mom, because ideally they're going to be with their mom as long as possible. That is their highest chance of not only survival, but also appropriate socialization and overall health. But I understand there are situations where the mother is harmed or killed, so those kittens don't have that option. And again, I understand that that happens, but we also have to recognize the effects of that. We can't just kind of disregard that. Of course, trauma and the environment. If they're in a really stressful environment or past learning history, all of that affects behavior. Because something, yeah, I put this picture, it reminded me as a cue. So I hear this thing called singleton syndrome. Again, it's kind of like a label that I hear a lot. And in many cases, what that actually is that kitten has chronic stress because their mother is not with them anymore. They were taken away from their siblings or separated, again, not purposely, separated from their siblings and their mother and their father. And that's why they are having more trouble eating or more stress, right? I always hear he was a singleton, so he has a lot of behavior issues. And I'm like, it's not that simple, right? It's definitely not that simple. But that chronic stress and inadequate nutrition is definitely playing a huge part. So what is socialization? This is a fun buzzword, and I love that people are talking more about it. But unfortunately, I think there's some common misconceptions, right? So if we were to break it down, socialization is the process in which appropriate social behaviors are developed. An animal learns how to recognize, interact, and bond with the species they live with, including us cool humans, cats, dogs. Some of my kitten socialization classes and socialization processes include chickens and goats. Every situation is different, but this is also teaching the kittens life skills. This is how they learn how to survive and thrive in our world. It's their world too, but we need to set them up to be successful in that world. And then again, of course, it improves the foundations for lifelong learning. And unfortunately, there's quite a few effects of poor socialization. And I'm sure many of you amazing fosters and rescues out there see this, just like I do, as someone that works in vet med, behavior, and animal welfare every day, which is why I'm super passionate about this subject. So early removal from the litter and or lack of socialization are the foundation for many adult behavioral patterns, including fears and phobias, separation distress and anxiety, hyperactivity, compulsive disorders, aggressive behavior, even though aggression is a normal communication tool and it's not a diagnosis, but they are more likely to exhibit aggression, most likely due to that fear and stress that they're dealing with towards humans, cats, and other species. Also, we all know that behavior is a major cause of relinquishment and or euthanasia. And again, in many cases, every caregiver I get a behavioral history on, or if I'm at my general practice and we talk about where they got their cat, half the time they're like, the cat came to me, which is a whole separate lecture, right? Because so many people are just opening up their doors when they are having trouble. They're not reaching out to someone like me with behavior because they don't realize people like me exist, right? They're not reaching out to their vet. And a big part of that is they're unsure what to do, but also perceived narratives about cats. They also have increased sensitivity to new experiences. I work with a lot of cats who, when their caregivers travel, they start house soiling, and they actually get a medical condition called cystitis, which is a very painful inflammation of the bladder because stress causes medical issues. Behavior is medicine, medicine is behavior. It's all related. And everyone's like, oh, cats are mysterious and aloof. I'm like, nope, that cat didn't have appropriate socialization. So you leaving is a very strange new thing for them. So they're extra sensitive to that. And they got so stressed that it actually caused increased inflammation in their bladder, a medical issue. They're often fearful of people and other animals. And again, we see that higher emotionality, right? So that observable behavioral and physiological component of emotion. So things are just overall harder for them. All you amazing people out there who may have generalized anxiety, everything's a little harder for you, especially new things. And unfortunately, many cats do not receive appropriate socialization. And we also know there is a lot of research, but also based on my experiences, lack of positive socialization experiences and exposure is similar to cats having or kittens having traumatic experiences. So a lot of people are like, we'll just avoid trauma, which I love. We should be doing that. But also, a kitten not having appropriate positive socialization experiences is trauma, right? And it's that's a powerful message, but it's true. More effects of poor socialization, lack of health care. I'm a huge fan of cooperative care and feline friendly handling, but in many cases, we're not seeing cats, which is also why they're relinquished and let go. Because in many cases, they're struggling and suffering from medical issues that cause behavior changes, because behavior is medicine. Like the majority of my aggression cases, the majority of my house soiling cases, there is an underlying medical reason for that. And those animals aren't seeing the vet due to the stress and narratives created about how cats don't need to see the vet, all of these things that many of you have probably heard. So they're not getting the care they need, and we can't manage that house soiling or even talk to that caregiver to reach out to them to help them understand why the cat's doing this behavior. I've gone on and on about abandonment and relinquishment, but also the decreased human animal bonds. I want to do everything in my power for that human and that cat to have a strong bond. If that person does not have a strong bond to that cat, not only is that harmful for both parties, right? Cats do so much for us, we want to do so much for them, but the likelihood that that person will relinquish their cat or open that door is a lot higher. So, for example, I deal with a lot of people who say, my cat just lives in the basement, because I deal with cats of all ages. That's just his baseline. They don't use that word, but that's that cat's normal. And they think that that's normal. And they're like, he doesn't really like me. And you could tell that there's already a disconnect happening and some breaking of human animal bond. And I'm like, actually, that cat is self-segregating into the basement because they plus or minus have underlying medical issues that have not been treated or identified. Also, which includes generalized anxiety, fear, anxiety, stress, right? And in many cases, once we acknowledge that, we build that bond, and that cat becomes more comfortable with exploring and being a cat, right? Not self-segregating and hiding all the time, which again is helpful data. That cat may be painful, GI pain, osteoarthritis pain, dental pain, but also maybe dealing with chronic stress and fear. And then again, I keep talking about those narratives about cats. As you can see, all of these cats are villains in Disney movies. Unfortunately, cats have a bad rap. I love my cat lovers, but I also see those cat lovers kind of expanding all these cat narratives, like these memes, like cats have 32 muscles in their ear to ignore us. Nope, they do, because they're prey predator animals and they're awesome. Again, I see cat lovers kind of saying some of these really negative cat stereotypes. So as animal caregivers and rescuers, it's very important when you're talking about kittens or cats to anybody to avoid using labels like bad words or mean or fractious. Oh, that word really gets me. And instead describe the behavior you're seeing. So unfortunately, there's a huge misunderstanding of cats and their needs. And we have research to support this, but also as a behavior consultant, I'll be honest, in my 10 years of doing this for a living, I have never gone into a home and have had a cat's basic needs being met. So essentially, safe spaces, separated and multiple and separated key environmental resources, outlets for play and predatory behavior. And again, I know people love their cats, but that's information and data that people don't even understand how to meet cats' basic needs. We have food and water, but not those other things, which are their basic needs, right? And again, there's a huge image problem for cats. They're mysterious, they're aloof, they hate the vet, they hate touch. They only like to be touched on their terms. When I work with dogs, I don't hear that. But when I post a video on my social media or I'm talking to a caregiver, they're like, the cat likes to be touched on their terms. I'm like, I like to be touched on my terms. And then you just see the person giggle and say, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense, right? Again, poor kitties. There's just a lot of harmful myths and stereotypes. And a big part of that is lack of appropriate socialization kind of increases those experiences that humans have with cats And then these narratives are kind of expanded. Again, I always joke that cat lovers love to hate cats because we just don't understand them very well, and we create all these narratives about them. So let's talk about socialization, because a lot of people think socialization is just exposing an animal to lots of stimuli. Whoa, is it not that? And is that problematic? So I think it's important to understand a little bit of the learning that we're doing, that they're doing when they are getting socialized during the key socialization period. So again, we know that kittens are always learning from their environment, experiences, and interactions. And of course, in every part of this, it is crucial to understand body language. As a veterinary technician, I was not taught body language. And I went to school, I took a VTNE. Now I'm specialized in boarded in behavior, but I'm going to be honest, I understand that many of my animal welfare, as well as veterinary colleagues, have not been severely experienced in understanding body language. So I can't touch on that enough, right? So the things that we tend to see with kitten socialization is habituation. So that's just a form of non-associative learning in which an animal learns to ignore a stimulus. So let's say a TV, right? Most kittens and cats and dogs and humans, most of us aren't afraid of TVs because that thing was on, nothing good or bad happened. So I got used to it. This watch, nothing good or bad happened. So I habituated to that watch, right? So that's what we're seeing a lot with socialization. They don't have a fear of new things or people. We're assessing their body language and making sure if they do show signs of fear or stress, we are removing the trigger or luring them away from it to make sure it is positive. So what happens is they just habituate to stuff. Because in cases where they are in that key socialization period, again, they don't have that fear immediately. So we could just, hey, we're exposing you to new stuff, but all like slowly, not tons at a time. And then we're also going to utilize classical conditioning, which is just when we associate a neutral stimuli, which just means something they aren't afraid of. So they can't be afraid of it. So it's just something chill with good stuff. So I touch you, but you didn't show any signs of fear or stress when I touched you. And then I give you treats, right? So this is just an example of a kitten exploring different objects. So there's a yoga block, there's a balloon. He's just exploring different objects. And I actually use syringes as treat deliverers because I'm like, hey, I do medication training for kittens and cats. Why would I not form a positive association with a syringe right away? So he's also getting reinforced for exploring. We're capturing that beautiful behavior. Oh my gosh, you're so cute. It also includes localization, which is essentially habituation, but learning to be attached to specific environments. So I'm not saying take this kitten to 30 different spaces, but we're taking them to new environments, right? Like in my kitten kindergarten class, I have 5 to 6, and the 5th and 6th one, the cats are already harness trained and we're going on a field trip outside, but they're older at that point, right? So we're just exposing them to new environments. So in your shelter, a lot of foster programs now are actually transitioning the kittens during this key socialization period to different fosters, which is chef's kiss. Very easy, practical way to provide amazing, appropriate socialization. They're going into different homes and being exposed to different stimuli, but their body language is being assessed and they're not being like flooded with, hey, we're going to 5 different places in one day. And then also generalization. I understand we can't expose a kitten or a puppy or a human to everything. So how generalization works is we expose them to a variety of things, pairing it with good stuff, making sure they have minimal to no signs of stress. And because the majority of their interactions and exposures to these new environments, human stimuli were good, they generalize that to other interactions, other people. But of course, we know if the kitten gets along with this one dog, that doesn't mean that kitten is going to get along with that every single dog in the world. Just like I'm super bubbly and friendly, but there are definitely people I don't get along with, and I was actually well socialized. So we have to consider that too. We also utilize positive reinforcement, which I think these words get really splayed up because sometimes I hear people saying these and using these incorrectly. Positive reinforcement is literally just adding something the learner, human or animal, likes to increase the likelihood of that behavior, right? So this is an example of me teaching something called a targeting behavior, which is their nose targeting my finger. I click and then reinforce. You're such a cute little kitten. So socialization is not only exposure, right? Unfortunately, this is what I commonly see. People think of socialization as exposure. Instead, we should think of it as concepts to train and life skills. It's all about helping your kitten make proactive decisions in their environment to provide reinforcement. Because sometimes I hear things like, my kitten tolerates touching while they're eating, or he tolerates the other cat, and it hurts my heart because it would be like me saying, they get along with everyone, they're happy, but act like, because that's kind of where I feel like people think those are. But if I said I tolerate my husband, that's cringe, right? I don't. I'm happily married. I love him, right? So sometimes that tolerate word, ideally, we're not teaching them to tolerate things because that means we're pushing them over threshold. They're not comfortable. We're putting them in situations they're not comfortable. It's teaching them to make good choices. So these are just two examples of a cat that was quickly startled. Something fell, a loud metal bowl. I get startled too. So the kitten made themselves bigger because they're like, hey, trigger, I'm going to make myself bigger to help make you increase your distance. And this guy kind of froze in place, but quickly returns to baseline. Or these people are very tense and stressed. Their heart rate is high. There's tension throughout their body. And I'll be honest, I'll see a lot of people who see this kitten and think that this kitten is comfortable enough to handle. This kitten is terrified. Everything is closed in. Ears are to the side. There's tension through that brow. Those whiskers are down. Those eyes are going from almond shape to rounds. And this is where I think body language is so crucial, because I can understand why someone might misinterpret that as this cat wants to be petted. They do not. This cat is actually pretty severely stressed, frozen in fear, actually. So it would be very inappropriate to handle this kitten in this moment from a socialization standpoint. Now, what often happens is something called sensitization. So we talked about habituation, right? There's something in the environment, nothing good or bad happens. So think of like a TV, or again, a watch, or sometimes a collar on a kitten if we place it on them during that key socialization period. Sensitization, on the other hand, is when an animal notices the stimuli, but they become more and more aware of it after repeated exposures. So a common example that we can think of is a vacuum, right? Whether it's a cat or a dog, you vacuum and we may not notice those subtle signs of stress non-maliciously, but they're not noted. Or we may say something like they grow out of it, which is not how stress works ever. We all know that, right? I didn't grow out of my stress. If anything, it gets worse if I don't find ways to handle it, learn other things to do when I'm stressed out, and make sure I'm in a safe environment, all that classic stuff. So then what happens is the caregiver or the rescue might say, we just go to the closet where the vacuum is, and the kitten runs. So now that kitten was uncomfortable with that at the very beginning. Maybe it wasn't noted. And then the kitten kept being exposed to it. So it got more and more explosive of a reaction. Understandably, imagine you were afraid of something and you just kept being exposed to it. It is going to make it a lot worse. And what we commonly see is something called flooding when it comes to socializing cats. And it's hard out there, everybody. I understand that a lot of the resources that are out there, this is what is being told to do. As a vet tech, I have access to more resources than sometimes in animal welfare. And a lot of those resources weren't really up to date, which is where I got really into kitten socialization and started creating resources, because we're all doing the best with what we know. But if we're sharing some of these resources that are outdated, we're kind of setting everyone up to fail, you and the kittens, right? So flooding is repeating exposure to something the kitten finds distressing without an opportunity to hide or escape. And this severely compromises animal welfare and must be avoided. So as you can see, if you're my age, this is Elvira from Looney Tunes. This kitten is not enjoying this experience. Elvira is, And Elvira might be misinterpreting and non-maliciously handling this cat, but that's something I see a lot. This kitten is frozen in fear or actively actually trying to flight, and the person is holding the kitten and they think that that's helping, they mean well, but no, this is sensitization. So some common examples of flooding is touching kittens exhibiting signs of fear, anxiety, and stress with gloves to get them to accept touch. They're not accepting touch. You're teaching them that they're showing us multiple signs of please stop, and then you are touching them. You are showing them people are scary and don't listen to their signals. And then we get that sensitization. So many times in foster situations, amazing fosters doing the best with what they know. And then they contact me because they're beating themselves up, even though they are amazing. And they're like, Tabitha, we transferred the cat to a different room and they severely regressed. I'm like, yep, I understand that because of the techniques that were being used. Or they go into a new home and now are they not only not better, they're worse than before they went to the rescue initially. And that's because flooding is really common. Touching, a big one I see is the cat is frozen, kind of averting their weight, shifting their weight a bit, and they're eating, and someone's like touching them over their head, which is also very traumatizing, right? Hands over head. Again, that's even darker. We're teaching that kitten, you only eat when you get to show signs of fear, stress. It's rough. Or again, something like placing them in an area they can't escape. Cats are prey predator animals. There should always be escapes, ideally, in like a home setting, or if you're a foster, you all are probably familiar with, we place resources, litter boxes, scratchers, cat trees in areas where there's entrances and exits, right? So for example, this hoodie, first off, there's more than one kitten in there. They can't escape. No one can assess their body language, and they are just being exposed to literally everything. This is another level of flooding, and this is severely problematic. So these are just a few examples of flooding. So what are we going to do to get started and utilize that classical conditioning and habituation? So the basics, which all of you are most likely doing, are we're going to set up a comfortable environment to start. Of course, we're going to consider infectious disease control. We're going to meet their physical and mental needs. We're going to manage and address medical issues, nutrition, and allow them an environment that allows them to perform species-specific behaviors. Like you have to scratch, you have to kill the bird, the fake bird. We're going to give you puzzle toys so you can engage in normal cat feeding patterns. But also we're going to assess and respect their body language and use considerate approach always. So an example of considerate approach is cats actually ask us for consent. I just lectured about this at a vet conference yesterday. Unfortunately, the majority of kittens and adult cats, usually their interactions are we engage with them without consent, and then we stop the interaction when they either actively walk away or paw at us or meow. So it actually ends negatively too. So for example, you see that this cat leans in to that hand and has soft, relaxed body language. That's consent. And the person only pets them on their head, shoulders, and neck once or twice, removes their hands, and the cat chooses to lean in again. So I've had cats discontinue aggressive behaviors because all we did was teach the caregiver or the shelter welfare caregiver how to assess and respect body language and use consent. And understandably, these cats then start asking for tons of attention because they're like, they listened to us. They didn't touch me when I didn't want to be touched. That is, can you imagine, right? As a woman, or a man, right? I don't want to be touched. If someone's touching me when I don't want to be touched, if I just have one issue of that happening, I'm going to be affected, let alone multiple, right? So this is where you can make a difference and identify what preferences those kittens like. And also fear-free, feline-friendly handling is something I'm a huge proponent of. With many kittens, I actually just vaccinate them while I'm playing with them. So this is a whole separate lecture. Both of these kittens are from the same litter, but they're both exhibiting different body language, and I adapt to their needs in that moment, right? So this is also part, if they have a traumatic vet experience, that affects them. And I understand there's going to be illness and nausea. So we're going to do the best we can to make those, we're going to manage that pain. We're going to manage that nausea to help prevent those negative associations. You're so cute. So we're going to talk about socialization and practice. Many of you are probably dealing with kittens. This is the benefit of this age, right? So you're getting the kittens at this age, or maybe even a little older. So we all know that kittens require social and environmental stimulation from an early age. So there's something called gentle handling, and we have a lot of research to support this. It ideally should begin at 2 weeks of age. We should be wearing gloves just because I want to be extra proactive, especially with disease control. And then you're also helping them become comfortable with gloves, which is great. So it matters how we're touching. So it should be gentle and occur in a manner that the kitten feels comfortable. So again, most cats feel the most comfortable faces, heads, neck, and shoulders. We might start with stroking or scratching. I'm going to start at the same level as the kitten. So for example, if you're the foster, I'm going to have you start to do that, not an unfamiliar person. And I may have you do this. And if you notice the cat tenses up a little bit, I may have you go back and just use a finger to pet, right? So we're adapting our approach based on how that cat is letting us know that they enjoy that. We might gently speak. And again, if we do notice fear, anxiety, and stress, we're going to stop and then again, maybe go to a one finger touch versus a whole hand and just adapt our approach in the minute. We're going to teach kittens that human touch can be a source of rewards, not danger. So again, you guys are handling these kittens every day anyways. So you could just be aware of how you're handling them, which many of you most likely are already. You're going to practice daily with young kittens, pet in different styles. So I might do this. I might go, do a little bit massage. I might have 5 or 6 different brushes that have different feels on them, right? And then of course, I'm going to go gently and slowly. How frequently and how long? And this is based on research, right? So we have a few studies that one was a total daily amount of 40 minutes, one was 2 hours, and this isn't all at the same time. And honestly, many of you, especially with kitten care, you are interacting with the kittens that much throughout the day anyways. So you are practically applying these techniques. We just want to be a little bit more aware of maybe adapting to what type of touch they like, right? So I'm not saying hold them for 2 hours. I understand you don't have the time to do that, but you are interacting with them all the time. So, you already are doing this, which is great. We're going to start for a few minutes, gradually increase based on the kitten's comfort. Again, start note. Ideally, and this is where a lot of the awesome foster orgs that I'm working with are starting to implement. Kitten is in this home for 1 week, kitten is in this home for 1 week, right? But I also have some stationary shelters where where multiple people are caring for that kitten, right? Those kittens, and they have various people handle them. But again, following all those guidelines. And of course, people of all sexes and ages, because we want to change it up, right? Husbandry, that's another huge thing. And I'm probably extra sensitive to that because I'm a vet tech. But all the cats I work with enjoy vet visits. I can medicate them. And a big part of that is because I was doing this, right? So we want to help them be comfortable with towels. That might be getting a warm towel out of the dryer, which you might be already doing, which is so amazing for them. And I might place it over them and then give them a treat and then just keep it in their cage for them to cuddle with. So, hey, we're just pairing towels with good things. And to be fair, the towel just being warm is pairing it with good things. I'm going to give mock injections, right? Fake exams. So this is just an example of a kitten. He's actively eating. I'm using considerate approach and I'm approaching him from the side and I'm just simulating an exam. Hi, little guy, going in your ear. And his tail is up. Well, now it's down. He's like, I really want that food. It's back up again. So I'm just doing some rubbing, giving him little breaks. And again, while you're handling them, like maybe moving them from somewhere, you might just start, hey, I'm gonna look in your ear. I'm gonna do this. Or you might even take a minute and do something like a mock exam on a warm towel while they're getting food. Obviously, ideally, they would be with their siblings and mother as long as possible. We all know this, right? But I understand it's not always applicable, but that we still need to note that that is going to affect their behavior. We need to be aware of that, right? So we all know if the presence of the mother, if they're friendly and confident towards people, and the mother's friendly with people and the kittens are with the kittens are more likely to be friendly with people, which I'm sure many of you have experienced when you've had mother cats and kittens. And also, if their siblings are with them, they tend to be more confident overall towards people and other animals. So how are we going to build this just into your daily routine? So, like I said, when you're weighing them every day or multiple times a day, you're going to just do like a quick little mock exam, right? You're going to maybe, you know, go to the side of them and look at their mouth, right? We're going to place them in the carrier, even though I understand you can carry them. Hey, we're going to just place you in the carrier to transfer you. We're going to pair this new thing with fun things and just make it be part of your everyday. They will habituate to carriers. So these are just a few examples
Being like, okay,
of me utilizing.
I'm gonna do this for a second.
This is an older cat. This kitten is 14 to 16 weeks.
Good job.
This kitten, you can see they're on my lap. They're exhibiting positive body language. I'm pairing it with good stuff. This third little black kitten. And I was like, that was fun. Let's take a break. And then he comes running back. So that's him giving me consent. Let's go.
You wanna come back?
He's like, I love this game.
Like, that's a fun game.
And now we practice this a little bit. And then at 10 weeks, 1 year, 2 years, this cat can happily and easily get his nails trimmed, not only from someone who's more experienced with handling, but from everyone, his adopter, his veterinarian professionals. Some other things that we could do just in daily practice. We're going to put different smells on a clean cloth. So we're going to gather scent of a healthy cat, right? Vaccinated, all of that lovely stuff, or dog. We're not going to place a cat or dog near them. That's a later thing. But we're going to place that scent near them for them to choose to explore. So we're not going to place it on them, right? We might play normal household sounds at a low level. So for example, a lot of the shelters I work with, we have an app, like this is an example of an app, and we'll just play quiet sounds. If we're noticing signs of stress, we go lower. But again, usually it's just background noise. Like people who live in the city, all that's background noise. But if you live in a rural area and you came to the city, you're like, I cannot sleep. So I might have just babies crying at a really low rate or people arguing because, woo, that's a thing. But you can just implement this 5 to 10 minutes a day and you're not doing anything extra and you're setting these cats up for success. I'm going to introduce them to different types of litter. That's a huge one. Ideally, people would just use unscented, soft, granule scooping litter because that's what most to all cats prefer. But with marketing and where products are at, unfortunately, a lot of cats aren't given what they prefer. But a lot of cats haven't really had experiences with other substrates. So, hey, especially during their key socialization period, I might offer 1 to 2 different litters, but I'm also going to provide them with different textures and surfaces to walk on. So this is a Fit Paws because I do canine stuff too, but you can see it's a little wobbly. There's little ribs on it, and I'm just pairing it with some churru, and they're just getting used to walking on different textures, right? I might bring in a Ziploc container with a little bit of water with a ball, so they're also getting used to water. There's so many fun, creative, easy ways that we can do this to help them become more comfortable and expose them to lots of different things. So again, we want to expose them to novel items. So I have a kitten socialization checklist that I created. It's in the notes, but it just gives you a few examples, right? Nothing's black and white. It's just a few examples of where to start. And this would be great. They would generalize really well with just these options. So we want to provide different substrates and textures, novel experiences, but also we want to change our body and face. So these are just 2 animal rescues that I work with who do a lot of kitten socialization. This is a colleague of mine. And you can see we're just giving them different things to explore. And this kitten, that carrier is just in there. She's getting reinforced. And then they close it for 1 second and they immediately open it. because they're breaking that behavior down a bit. They're not, even though that cat's comfortable, they're not gonna be like, okay, you went into it once, we're gonna have you in it for 10 minutes. Just little baby steps. They're just exploring. You're so cute. Changing up your body and face, right? We all know my partner who has a big beard and glasses. People are like, cats are fearful, puppies are fearful of men. And I'm like, they were never socialized appropriately, right? So there's a lot of different ways we can do this. In my socialization classes, I have crutches, I have a wheelchair, I have a cane. I wear masks and scarves. You can have a lot of fun with it. You can also, again, I'm just changing my gait and walking with a moving bag. And you see the kittens got a little startled, but they quickly returned to baseline. So they kind of went like that, quickly returned to baseline. I know it seems silly, but this is just something you can do 30 seconds a day. Or you can have fun with it. So I am wearing a mask and really big glasses and just playing with them. And then I put on a creepy bear and bunny ears for heads up. It's so creepy. But I'm just having fun and exposing them to new things in a positive way. We also want to teach them appropriate play, right? That's huge, especially because the amount of human-directed aggression and play aggression I see that could have easily been prevented is a lot, right? So we want to simulate their prey. We want to wind down that toy. So we're not going to just take the toy away. Mice don't just disappear. We're going to start to kill that toy. So maybe we have to go, or that kitten is kind of doing the whole I'm tired thing. We're going to have that bird kind of start to flop and then place it down. And then usually I give them a treat because at the end of their kill, they eat. And one fun rule that you can tell adopters and your fosters, we do not touch while playing. That is just, I like to focus on the positive, but that's an easy one. And I always tell people, if your cat is hunting a mouse, you don't stop in the middle and say, hey, kitty, because that cat should redirect to you. They're in play predator mode, right? So that's just a good rule. No hands and feet aren't toys, and don't touch them when you're playing. But socialization isn't for only young kittens, right? Socialization during a sensitive period is critical in reducing fear responses and teaching appropriate social behavior, but socialization and training is important for older kittens as well and should be utilized throughout their lives. Like, I'm always learning. I'm 40 and I'm being exposed to new things and I'm always learning. So that experience never stops, right? But it can also make a really big difference. I do a lot of kitten socialization or kitten kindergarten classes for cats who are 3 to 8 months to a year old. And this is just one study from one of my amazing colleagues where one group of kittens between 3 and 8 months old, nothing was done, as in like their needs were met and all that lovely stuff, but no additional socialization techniques were used. And then with these kittens, this group of kittens, and it impacted their cognitive abilities. They were more likely to greet their owners and interact with their owners and react to their owners' behavior, which increases the human-animal bond. They were more likely to learn new tasks quicker. So again, it's not only for young kittens. And of course, I just want to briefly touch on if they do have fear or trauma, that's a whole separate lecture. But if there is fear and trauma present, then we have to break the learning process down a little bit more. So I talked about using techniques that the cat's comfortable with. You're always assessing body language and moving at a pace they're comfortable with. But when they're really fearful, that's when we're doing desensitization. So we're starting at a low stress starting point, which is what you were doing before. So let's say if a kitten is terrified, sometimes if this is the kitten, I don't have a kitten right now. I'm not going to start here. I might start with my hand here, give treat. Here, give treat. And to be fair, since I'm working at the kitten's pace, they learn a lot faster and it's actually a lot more efficient versus what I tend to see is they're scared, food. And then I have severe regression and severe behavior problems in the future. And then also we're going to go start at a non-stressful starting point for them and then pair it with good stuff, as you can see in this lovely little infographic. So it's a little more in-depth behavior modification, but you can do it. I can teach you. Many of you may be familiar or work with evidence-based, positive, humane, right? Animal welfare trainers, behavior consultants, VTSs, all that lovely stuff. So in conclusion, right, we want to set up a low stress environment. These are just some general guidelines. We want to start small and work up. So when they're in that key socialization period, you may be able to set up a room with a variety of stimuli like yoga blocks. Here's a fleece blanket. Here's a sheet. We're going to bring in some fake grass. We're going to bring in some real grass. And that can all be in the same room. As you saw with some of those videos I was doing with kittens, you're just assessing, because again, during that key socialization period, it's mostly just habituation and reinforcing them for exploring. It's fairly easy, which is awesome and doesn't take much time. But we're going to start small and work up. So ideally 1 to 2 things at a time. So for example, I'm not going to be working on handling while also bringing them to this new substrate while also having an unfamiliar person come in. So that's what I mean by that. Or again, putting them in an area they can't escape and then exposing them to tons of things. We're going to always assess body language throughout. That is huge. They should be below threshold, which means exhibiting minimal to no signs of stress. We're going to pair it with stuff kittens like, and we're going to keep it fun. Not only is this really good for kittens, but it's really good for us. When I work with rescues and clients and they get to see kittens being what they're supposed to, like allowed to kitten, but also like engaging and interacting with new things on their own and making good choices on their own and happily being touched and happily taking treats from people and soliciting attention, that is amazing. That's why we do this. So also there is a kitten kindergarten class. Everything I talked about is more, hey, these are things you can do right now. But I do love a kitten kindergarten class. I think they're amazing. So I just want to make a quick note. It's just an early socialization education program. And not only does it's structured usually into one, because sometimes it's just an online class. Sometimes it's into 4 or 6, right? And not only does it help these kittens get exposed to things in a structured, safe, and positive way, but it also instructs caregivers and animal welfare professionals and veterinary professionals what cats' normal behaviors are and how to prevent common behavior and health problems. Like, what is normal feline development? What's their normal behavior? It's awesome. And again, even if you can't do classes, you might just have a 30-minute live Facebook or a webinar talking about kitten socialization. And that can make a big difference. Or talking to an adopter about it for 15 minutes and understanding it, right? Or again, I shared all those videos that I shared with you on my social media. Took me 90 seconds. People love kitten videos, but I also planted seeds about, hey, kittens need socialization and it's not just flooding. It's not flooding at all, actually. So I was educating while also creating content that gets me interest and engagement, because that does matter as a rescue. So it's just a win-win-win. So this is just an example of one study where we were working in a veterinary hospital and the owners just received less than an hour. So it could have been 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes of behavior guidance. And over time, just with that, those caregivers reported fewer unwanted behaviors in their cats. That's huge. You have a lot of power. You have a lot of things you can do to make a difference. So again, you want to understand the importance of early socialization, educate yourself on kitten development, stages and body language, staff and foster education. It's a team effort. We all want to empower our staff and fosters. You don't want to kind of be like, I'm not sure what to do. This kitten's still fearful, so I'm going to expose them to more things, right? We want to work to help create standard operating protocols, creating resources, making sure everyone feels comfortable, has psychological safety if they have questions or concerns. We're going to start small. Some of you are behavior nerds. I see you. Let's empower you and let you get started with this. And then, of course, we're going to work with credentialed and evidence-based positive reinforcement behavior professionals. What great timing, Monica.
Thank you so much, Tabitha. This has been absolutely amazing. So much invaluable information here. We do not have time for anything other than one question for Tabitha, but there is one question that many of our attendees ask, and I feel like they've got a burning need they need to know.
Love it.
Ready? Lots of them have heard that when you have a litter of kittens, you should maybe separate the one who's the most fearful from the ones who are outgoing in order to speed up that fearful guy's socialization? What do you think about that?
So that is such a great question. And it's complex, which is going to be all my answers. But based on what I said earlier, right? I can see where that came from because if that kitten is really, really fearful and the other kittens aren't, that kitten's behavior is impacting those other kittens' behavior. So I don't necessarily think there is some knowledge, like truth in that, but we have to kind of consider, which is why our jobs are hard, like, can we separate that kitten and provide them with a behavior professional or animal welfare professional who's interested in behavior where they can have some tools to kind of build that relationship and bond and then integrate those kittens back with that. That would be ideal, but there is some truth to that because again, if that kitten's really fearful and stressed and the others aren't, his or her behavior does affect the others. But
Great.
we'll be back with tons of answers to questions
Yes.
and a whole separate Q&A.
That is very true. Thank you so much, Tabitha.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for all you do, everybody.
Thank you all so much for being here today. We hope your kitten season is safe, fun, and inspiring.